What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So the first fight for Sharaputdin Magomedov is super anticipated. Everybody's waiting to see when that'll be. There's some talk around UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi, which does make sense that he would make his debut on that card. But what's really surprising to me is who they're proposing as the opponent. It's Derek Brunson. Now, I thought Brunson had retired, but apparently not. But I'm going to make the argument that Blonde Brunson is about the most difficult introduction fight in the UFC that you could possibly make.
Absolutely. And usually nobody would jump into a guy who just was in the top 5 at one of the best divisions the UFC's seen in quite some time. But, you know, Magomed Sharaputdin, they have a lot of stock in this guy, and they think he could actually be one of these, you know, next up-and-comers, one of these undefeated freaks from some corner of the world that we've never heard about. He looks like a Bond villain. He's pretty gangster when it comes to, you know, out of the octagon antics, and he just seems like the kind of guy that you want to have on your roster, fighting often and hopefully fighting for big opportunities soon. But when you say that you're going to sign somebody to fight Derek Brunson in their very first fight, you're putting a lot at stake with that one, because no matter who you are, no matter what you've done outside of the UFC, once you step in there, it's a whole different ball game. And Derek Brunson has been the destroyer of many up-and-comers. He's been the guy, the gatekeeper, if you will, that people thought they were just going to stomp over on their way to the title. And then he had totally different plans for them, redirected them right into Loserville, and sent them, you know, home packing and questioning all of their decisions of their life. So I think this is a great matchup. I'm not sure it's going to happen yet, because I still have to go online and see if Derek Brunson is retired or if he's back in the in the workout room. I know I've been following Magomed Sharaputdin ever since I kind of found out about him, just because I've been fascinated by him. And I know he spends a lot of time out there in the Middle East. He's in Abu Dhabi a lot, so he's clearly training all the time. He's over there a lot. I think he'd be a pretty big name over there. I know he's pretty religious, and that just seems like the perfect time for him to make his debut. I think Derek Brunson would be a great first opponent, but be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it and you might learn the hard way that the UFC is another level.
Yeah, and I always say that the matchmakers tell the story through the matches that they make. And the story that I'm getting here is, if this fight does in fact come to fruition, that the matchmakers want to fast track this guy to a title. You don't give somebody their first fight in the organization, a fighter like Derek Brunson, unless you feel like this guy is 1 or 2 more fights after that away from a title shot. And he does seem like the kind of guy, as you said, he looks like a Bond villain, but he is a very religious, very devout Muslim as well. He's going to have a big following in the Middle East. I could absolutely see them putting him on that card. And the crazy thing to me about this guy is, as you said, he's got all of these out of the octagon antics. He's a very intense guy. I'm very captivated by him. I'm very captivated by his story. I'm excited to learn more about him. But one of the cool things is there's like this mystere around him. If you look at his Instagram profile, he says that he's 17-0 with like 13 or 14 knockouts. But then if you look at like SureDog and Tapology, it shows 11-0 with like 10 knockouts. So, you know, how many fights has he even had? Were some of those in obscure organizations and they didn't even sanction them?
Unsanctioned bouts.
This guy's interesting, man. He's fun. He's a finishing machine. I cannot wait to see what he does. But as you said, be careful what you wish for, because I'm not going to sit here and disrespect Derek Brunson and say that he's going to be walked all over if that fight comes to fruition in Abu Dhabi. Brunson's always got a chance.
Yeah, and I'm like everybody else that went out there and started looking him up when I found out who he was. I see him like beating people up in the mall, and just recently he was doing some sort of grappling event. I believe it was an ADCC qualifier of some kind, where him and his opponent agreed not to go for any sort of leg locks or entanglements, just for the safety of his knee. And I think the opponent also had something wrong with one of his knees. And then the kid pulls guard on Sharaputdin. And so right once he gets up and they kind of break away from that exchange, Sharaputdin sends a kick his way, because, you know, he's not going to play by the jiu-jitsu rules if you're going to try to double cross him while the competition goes on. So all of that sort of stuff, while it's probably not great for, you know, young kids to aspire to be like, it's something that I'm definitely interested in. And I can't wait to see what Sharaputdin does inside the octagon. But like you said, he's very compelling, and I would love to hear his story. I'd love to hear more about him, and that's what the one thing the UFC does better than any other organization, not just in combat sports, but in all sports across the board. They can tell your story, and they can find people from all over the world that we didn't even realize were as fascinating as they were, and kind of bring them to light, and we open up our homes to them, and they become some of our favorite athletes of all time.
Yeah. And, I don't know the context behind the Mall fight. Some people say the other guy insinuated it. Some people say Sharaputdin did. I don't know the context behind the rule set of ADCC, and this guy went for a leg lock when he wasn't supposed to, so Sharaputdin started
I think
throwing.
that was more of a gentleman's agreement, and that guy kind of double-crossed him.
And then he gets kicked in a jiu-jitsu match, which...
Rightfully so.
Yeah. I mean, if you tell me you're not going to go for a leg lock on me and you go for a leg lock, might be getting kicked.
And I got my UFC debut coming up, which is something that I take very seriously, not this grappling match.
Exactly, yeah. So, I don't know exactly what the context is there, but as you said, nobody tells a story like the UFC. Just take, for example, Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya. They pulled the guy who was Israel's boogeyman, from obscurity, who has, competed in glory and won many belts over there, but wasn't on the tips of the tongue of many MMA fans. And they said, you know what? We're going to get him and we're going to tell one of the best stories that MMA has seen recently. And boy, did they ever. And that's just, with Izzy's latest win, that's just launched his career even further into superstardom. So I believe that the UFC will be able to tell Sharaputdin's story properly. And I can't wait to learn about it, and I can't wait to see him fight. I hope they put him in at UFC 294. I hope it's against Brunson, because we're going to see right out of the gate, is this guy legit or is he not? Can he swim with the big fish or can he not? This is going to be a telling experience.
Absolutely. I'll keep an eye out and be tuned in to see what they do with this guy.
No doubt.